All right. Now, since my top 15 list of goaltenders, top 10 favorites, top 15 all time, has garnered attention and controversy, I figured I'd throw on my Vancouver Millionaires jersey to go with my third Vancouver jersey of the day and my Vancouver Canucks with Johnny Canuck hat that has Canucks underneath. And even though it's the right shape for a hat because Canucks is underneath, every time I can read Canucks, it makes me feel like my first name should be Gomer, and I can understand why it was a cheap hat. I think I got it for like $6. But I like the red and yellow Johnny Canuck. No, I do not agree with the idea of making Johnny Canuck the main logo. The reason being, well, people get upset about, oh, well, whales. What does a whale have to do with being a Canuck? I have seen whales in Vancouver Aquarium. There are whales just off the coast. You can go up Sunshine Coast and see plenty of whales. Not a lot of lumberjacks with hockey sticks running around the city. You know what I'm saying? And if you want your team to be taken seriously, you don't stick a lumberjack on the front of it. Okay, that's just my thing, and I see it. The skate logo I'm fine with. It's ugly, but it's got sentimental value. Like if you think about it, if somebody came up with the skate logo right now and said, here's my new Canucks logo, people would look at it and go, what in the hell are you thinking? But because we associated with 94, with 82, because that was the logo, even though we had the ugly V jerseys, people have this warm and fuzzy about the old Canucks, and there's a warm and fuzzy about Johnny Canuck based on the fact that Johnny Canuck's a thing. But I wouldn't want to see it as the regular. I'd rather see this as the regular jersey, or just as an alternate they wear once in a while. Although their record in this jersey was horrendous, horrendous. In fact, after the outdoor game, which was actually an indoor game because they closed the roof, so there was no point in having it in BC Place other than money, 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 money. Um, I suggested they burn these jerseys and never wear them again because that was one of the most listless games I've ever seen the Canucks play. Anyways, so I'm doing defenseman because I figure, you know what, if I'm really going to get people to hate in comments, and here's what I need people to do. I need people to hit like and subscribe, okay, because I want my subscriber count to keep going up. It seems like my videos get more features on YouTube if I have more subscribers. It seems to be what's happening, anyways. My videos are now showing up as recommendations for me. So I'll look through my recommended videos and it's like, yeah, I made that. And that never used to happen. So something's going on here. But I figure that with this video, I should achieve quite a bit of hatred from people. Because my top 20 defenseman doesn't feature PK Subban. And it almost did. He was close. I put him as an honorable mention, and he's not one of my 10 favorites, even though he gave like $10 million to a hospital and they built a wing for him. I mean, if we're going to get into humanitarians, and I may at some point get into that, into hockey players that did something really wonderful in their community, and I can look way back with that and pull out stories that probably are completely forgotten. But anyways, my 10 favorite defensemen. Since this is favorites, there doesn't seem to be any arguments about that because, nobody can say, that wasn't your favorite. How could that be your favorite? Number 10 is Pekka Rautakelio, the greatest name in the history of hockey. Calgary Flame and Atlanta Flame. He didn't play long enough in the NHL for me to say, oh, he's one of my favorite defensemen and he's one of the best. But he scored a lot of points. And I'd be very curious, to know in an alternate reality if he'd stayed in the NHL, just how many points he would have put up in the 80s. Number 9 of my favorite defensemen is Ed Jovanovski, who also isn't in the top 20 I've seen. And that was tough. I'd make him an honorable mention in that one. Jovo Kopp was the best Canuck defenseman we ever had. Played great for Team Canada. Hit like a he hit like a sack of hammers. Like he was absolutely brutal in a corner. And he wasn't dirty about it. He wasn't a dirty player. He pissed teams off, but he wasn't a dirty player. Number 8, Zdeno Chara. Chara would be higher if I didn't yell at the screen a lot when I watched Bruins games. And even when he was winning Norris trophies, I was still yelling at the screen. And maybe it's just me, but I would see him out of position a lot. There was a period in time where Claude Julien decided that the power play would be better served by having him just stand in the net and stand there. And he was wrong. Just because Chara's big doesn't mean that you stand him in front of the net and have him block the goalie. And that was an idea that Julien had and stayed with for quite a while, and it drove me insane. So I was yelling at Chara, but I was probably yelling at Julien as much as Chara. Number 7 on the list is Dave Babbage. Babbage played an incredibly long time in the NHL, and he was very effective for most of it. He bounced around from bad team to bad team, and never let it affect his play. And I've said it about other players, Tugnutt being the most obvious, but the guys who bounce around from bad team to bad team and remain at the top of their game, I really admire their effort, their heart, and just their ability to rise to the occasion no matter where they are. Okay. 6 is Doug Lidster. Lidster might have been the best point man we had in the 80s, the only point man we had in the 80s. Him and Garth Butcher were worked into the ground in the late 80s, early 90s. Number 5 is Torrey Krug. I've talked a lot about Krug. I love the kid on the power play. Hopefully he can live up to this contract. I don't see a reason that he won't. I'm glad he's going to stay a Bruin. Number 4 is Paul Reinhart. Not to be confused with Griffin. I don't know if I want to play Reinhart. Paul Reinhart, absolutely one of the best mobile defensemen I've ever seen. Crying shame that injuries shortened his career, because if not, he'd be considered Hall of Fame material. He scored a lot of points, and he was a damn good defenseman at both ends of the ice. Number 3 is Mark Tenorti, not Jared Tenorti. Got to make sure people don't go, oh, he's talking about Jared Tenorti and Griffin Reinhart. No, no, no. Paul Reinhart and Mark Tenorti, the dads, the good defensemen. Mark Tenorti was everything I wanted the Dallas Stars to be. Tough, big, talented, driven, and never gave up on the play. And again, he could throw hits, and he wasn't dirty about it. And that's big to me. Number 2, Johnny Boychuk. And why not? Because he's Johnny Boychuk. And he's made a career out of proving teams wrong. Colorado traded him to Boston. They gave up on him. Boston trades him to the Islanders for a draft pick because they figure they don't need him. Both teams were dead wrong, and Boychuk is an incredibly important part of the New York Islanders. And my number 1 favorite defenseman, Ray Borg. Who else? Who else would it be? So let's make people hate me. That's what I'm going to do now. The top 20 defensemen I've seen. Number 20, Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson played a very long time, was very effective, very good offensive defenseman. Played great for the Blackhawks and the Sharks. I don't recall him ever complaining about being on an expansion team. He wasn't part of the expansion draft, but he was there not long after, and he did see some rough times there, but he got his way through it. Number 19 is Phil Housley. I'd have Phil higher up, but he would get moved back and forth between forward and defense, and it was because his defense was sometimes suspect. I would think that if advanced stats had existed in the time of Phil Housley, that we would probably see a lot of people complaining about him even getting mentioned for Norris because advanced stats would be bad. I just get that feeling. Number 18, Larry Murphy. Murphy played forever. Put up with a lot of trash talk in Toronto. Went to Detroit and just won the Stanley Cup or two. And he earned everything he got. Ooh. All right. Ooh, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. This will not be a video where I pass out during the point where I'm recording. It's not gonna happen. Number 17, Rod Langway. I wanted to put Langway a lot higher, but defensemen are tough. Defensemen are really, really tough to grade. Langway is a guy that I felt was, I mean, he won Norris trophies, but how often do you hear about him now? He didn't score points. He was just a fantastic defensive defenseman, and he was so good defensively that even though he didn't score points, and this was in the 80s, he still won Norris trophies because he was so damn good at his job. So for that reason, he's on my list. 16, Duncan Keith. And this is where I kind of get torn a little bit. But Keith has had some really, really fantastic seasons. He's been a Norris Trophy winner. He's won a Conn Smythe. And on top of that, he still has some good years left in him. He's not over the hill. So he may end up moving up this list, a few years from now. 15 is Rob Blake. And I was not a Rob Blake fan. I didn't particularly like Rob Blake. But I cannot deny his talent. And it showed right from when he was a rookie, right up until he retired. 14 is Shea Weber. I give Weber the nod over Subban because we're talking about defensemen. And from what I've seen, Weber has been dominant. He's a Team Canada member again. He's won Norris trophies. He has been an absolute rock on the blue line. And the best way to punish me would be liking the video and subscribing, because that's the best way to show me that I'm wrong. Just subscribe so every time a video comes up, you can go in and go, you're wrong, and then feel good. Feel good about that. 13, and I hate him, is Chris Pronger. Chris Pronger is a player that I really couldn't stand his entire career. But I will not deny his place on this list. He'd be higher if he didn't play dirty. He'd be higher up if he didn't play a dirty game. He'd be in the top. He might be in the top 5. But the dirty hits, the suspensions, and the fact that now that his career got ended on concussions, now he's, I'm the head injury guy, and I got to make sure other guys don't get hurt. Where was that consideration when he was smashing the crap out of guys from behind into the boards? Where was that consideration when he was ending careers? I don't seem to remember him being concerned at that point. So that's why he's on the list, but he's not higher up. Because Chris Pronger, and it's something that these guys, like Lindros revising history about Quebec. It's not I wouldn't play in Quebec, it was the ownership. Nope. I don't buy it because he never said it at the time. And for Pronger to now be like, I'm really concerned about head injuries. Yeah, because you got one. You're stuck with post-concussion syndrome probably for the rest of your life. And while I feel horrible for a guy who gets that, what about the guys he was smashing headfirst into the boards? What about the absolutely horrible dirty hits I saw him throw in his career? Absolutely horrible. I can't think of anybody that's made me yell at the TV more than Pronger, just for being absolutely reckless. And I cheered for a team that had Bertuzzi on it. Number 12, Erik Karlsson. Karlsson will end up going higher if he keeps scoring at the points per game rate that he's scoring at right now. Crazy that he scored 82 points in 82 games this year. I never thought I'd see a defenseman score a point a game again, but he proved me wrong, and he is fantastic, and he's a soldier at both ends of the ice, and I really think that as he matures, if he can keep up the production, and if he can really, really tighten up the play in his own zone, he can win 5 or 6 Norris trophies before he retires. From now. So beyond whatever he has now, 5 or 6 more before he retires. But at this point, he's number 12. Number 11, Paul Coffey. Now, Coffey's at 11 because he was a rover. He was their 4th forward. He didn't play true defense. And later on in the game, when his speed went, he started being traded like crazy. He was still scoring points. He was scoring points right up until he was in Hartford. And the reason he was getting traded is because defensively he was a huge liability. So he ended up being traded a lot the last few years in the NHL because every team would think, okay, well, we can turn around his game. And then within 20 games, they would say, okay, we can't turn around his game, and he'd be gone. But his point totals can't be denied in the mid 80s. His dominance at that end of the ice can't be denied either. So for that reason alone, he's number 11 on the list. If he'd been more defensively responsible, I move him up. Number 10, I have Zdeno Chara. Again, I scream at the screen a lot with Chara, but I can't deny the guy's got incredible reach based on the fact he's 6'9". His height doesn't hold him back. He doesn't rely on it to do his job. He takes advantage of it. And he proved last year when everybody's like, oh, Chara's done. He proved last year he's not done. Now, it's going to be harder and harder for him to continue on that pace coming into this season even. But I wouldn't bet against him because Chara is a warrior. Number 9, and at this point it gets so hard to pick. Like, I really agonized over these picks. I was like, man, I really don't know. It's hard. Number 9, I have Scott Niedermayer. Niedermayer, if he hadn't played in Jersey, would have scored more points. But Jersey made him the great defenseman he was. He was dominant. He was clean. He was a guy that even when he played on the Ducks, and I hated the Ducks, I couldn't hate on Niedermayer. I hated watching the Canucks get beat by him, but man, what a fantastic defenseman in every area of the game. There wasn't anything he didn't excel at. Number 8, Chris Chelios. Not a fan. But Chelios remained effective into his late 30s, early 40s. So based on longevity, based on the fact that towards the end of his career, he did whatever he had to do to make his team better, and he adapted his game for whatever team he was on. He even played in the minors just to try to get his way back to the NHL. So you could say, oh, he hung on too long. Yeah, probably. But he never gave up until the very end. And I respect that. And I respect the game that he played, and he played a lot of games. He scored a lot of points. And he won some championships. He won some Stanley Cups. Number 7, Scott Stevens. When you see a hit in slow motion, and it's targeting the head, and it looks clean, but you know it's probably dirty, that's a Scott Stevens hit. The NHL rulebook has been rewritten because Scott Stevens threw clean hits that put guys out of the game. So the NHL had to look at it and go, okay, that's a clean hit. We need to make sure it's not a clean hit because guys are getting hurt. All you need to do is just YouTube Scott Stevens running over Paul Kariya. Absolutely the most devastating hit I've ever seen. And heartbreaking because Kariya was never the same after that hit. And it was clean. It was a clean hit. And Stevens made a career off of those kinds of hits, and he was a pretty damn good defenseman on top of it. He scored points. He hit everything that moved, and he was great in his own zone. And I've never heard anything about him being a bad teammate either. But my God, if you were coming across center and you had your head down, he'd end your night. He would make you pay. Number 6, Denny Potvin. And this is tough too, but you know, I can't deny that the New York Islanders, the dynasty they had, the 4 years in a row that they won the Stanley Cup, and the fact they went to the Stanley Cup final the 5th year. So, I mean, they played hundreds of playoff games, and Denny Potvin was a warrior in all of them. And he really held that blue line. I mean, he was the guy. They had a decent blue line behind him, but Denny Potvin was the marquee man, and he lived up to it. And while I wasn't an Islanders fan at the time, I really respect Denny Potvin's game. Number 5, Larry Robinson. Larry Robinson played forever. Even when I started watching hockey, which was in the early 80s, he was fantastic. I never saw him in the 70s. His numbers were even better in the 70s. He went to the Kings and played pretty well for the Kings, too, after he was considered to be done. Montreal figured he was done. And he went to LA and he played 2 years and he played pretty well. And he showed as a player that he was going to be a decent coach, and I think he was a decent coach. I don't think he got as many breaks as he could have, but that's just the way that coaching goes. But Larry Robinson at 5 in what I've seen. So before Montreal fans can go, Robinson was better than the guys who you have ahead of him on your list. This is the hockey I watched. So I don't know what he did in the 70s. I didn't watch it. Number 4, Al MacInnis. Booming point shot. Get out of the way. Everybody get out of the way. It wasn't just the speed that MacInnis had. It was the accuracy, and it was that it was always that fast. Yeah, you can get almost any defenseman to load up and shoot a puck at 95 to 100 miles an hour, but he did it every time. And he didn't even seem to be putting any effort into it. He'd do it with a smile on his face. And, MacInnis generally, I think, scared his own teammates when he wound up for the shot. And again, Canucks fan here, MacInnis put my team out of the playoffs more than once. I can't deny the guy's talent. Absolutely amazing. Number 3, Brian Leetch. Brian Leetch, one of the most complete defensemen I ever saw. He played forever and always seemed to be a good team guy too. Again, hockey circles, people talk and gossip about players, but never heard anything about Leetch. Never heard anything bad about him. And towards the end of his career, when he played in Boston and Toronto, he was a good teammate, and he was able to adapt his game as he got older, and realized I've lost a step. I need to change my game, and he did it, and he did very, very well. Number 2, and this was the toughest call, man. Like, I could argue a tie for number 1 here. I could argue a tie for number 1 based on the fact that one dominated in the 80s and one dominated in the 2000s, completely different eras. Who knows what one would have done in the other one's era? So Ray Bourque and Nick Lidstrom. I have no, I put Bourque as first, but when I wrote it, I felt kind of dirty because I was like, am I doing it because I'm a Bruins fan? No, I don't think so, because he played 20 years in the NHL and he was just fantastic the whole way along. When he retired, he was still one of the best defensemen in the game. But so was Nick Lidstrom. Like, Lidstrom, he won Norris trophies every year based on reputation. And Lidstrom didn't even win Norris trophies in the beginning of his career that he should have. He should have more Norris trophies on his record than he has. So it's an impossible call. And because of the fact they played in different eras. Like, it's even harder with defensemen than it is with goalies. Because goalies, I can kind of look and go, okay, well, how did they define the game and how did they change the game? Well, neither Bourque nor Lidstrom changed the game. They were their own men. And they dominated in their own way. And they both won Stanley Cups. I know Bourque only has one, but if not for playing in Boston, he would have had more. And man, that's a tough call. That is, so yeah, I'll leave it that way. I'll say, you know what? A tie for first place, Nick Lidstrom, Ray Bourque, and call it a night. Because I don't know any other way to make this work. Because the math is just absolutely wonky on this. Lidstrom and Bourque. Absolutely fantastic blue liners. So there you have it. The 20 best blue liners I've seen in the time that I saw them. That's why Brad Park's not in here. That's why Bobby Orr's not in here. When I saw Brad Park, he wasn't in his prime Brad Park. And I never saw Bobby Orr play because he retired before I started watching hockey. Otherwise, yes, Bobby Orr would be number one and he'd be over the moon and I'd be like the greatest player in the history of the game because he revolutionized hockey. At the very least, him and Gretzky would be tied for number one, but I didn't see him play. So there's that. Anyways, that's it for my defenseman. Have at her. I will be back again tomorrow. I will do more list stuff like this. And then I'm just waiting now until the final, Hoodler and all these guys all fall off the free agent list. And then I can start really constructing lineups for each team and just making calls. Just saying, okay, season previews, here we go. And just start doing season previews on all 30 teams in the NHL. And I haven't figured out whether I'm going to go alphabetically, reverse alphabetical, do all the Canadian teams first again, go American teams first, Canadian teams last. I'll figure it out. But yeah, hit like and subscribe. I'm very proud of what this channel has become. I'm very proud of the fact people watch me, and I'm very proud of the fact that I've done 3 videos today and I haven't drank a pop. Not one. It's not going to be a trend forever, but I'm telling you, I am not gonna just, ignore a comment like the drinking game because it came up twice. I'm like, no, no. I can starve myself from pop for a while I make a video. I could do that. No problem. Maybe it's a Dave Letterman thing. I used to notice watching talk shows that the host would sip from their water cup quite a bit. And I'm like, it's a nice break. It's a nice, you ask a question or you make a comment and then you use, you have, you kind of create the comfortable silence. But yeah, no, that's fine. Anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate everybody watching this, and honestly, it's been great. And thank you.